I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Paramang people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Unfortunately, a wine barrel full of wine fell onto my foot. I had a very serious injury, which essentially kept me in a chair in a bed for nearly 8 months. And that was a long time to, rethink what I wanted to do. And it was also questionable whether I can walk properly, whether I can work on the floor again.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Marcell Kustos is a modern-day wine professional. And by that, I mean he has had a varied and fascinating journey thus far. LUDO Wines is his brand, which produces organically farmed wines from Adelaide Hills and McLaren Vale in South Australia. I'm honoured to have him on the podcast to share his story with the world. Hi Marcell, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, hi everyone, thanks for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show. I've been following your career for some years now, and it never ceases to amaze me that you've got something new that you're up to and fitting in, 48 hours in the regular 24. But tell us a little bit about where you're originally from and what was your childhood like?
Look, thanks for that. I mean, likewise. I've been following your journey for a long time, so I'm so happy to be here. So, I'm from Hungary. So I was born and I grew up in Hungary, in the Hungarian countryside, close to the Austrian border. And it's Hungary. People and wine in Hungary actually have a very, intimate relationship. By that I mean that wine is very much part of the everyday life. So most people would have a small vineyard in their backyard, or a family member would have a vineyard, or a friend of a friend would have a vineyard. So one way or the other, it's very likely that you would be invited to harvest some grapes and turn that into wine throughout your life. And I've been fortunate enough that both sides of my family had a small vineyard, and winemaking was very much part of the annual agenda. So when I was, let's say, 10 years old, I would be already helping my granddad making wine and having a cheeky sip here or there. So that very much, paved my passion for wine. And when it came to deciding what to study and what I would like to do when I grow up, I didn't necessarily have a very clear idea at that time, but I definitely loved. I love flavors. I love food. I loved wine, and I just loved the idea of creating something with my hands and creating new flavors. So I actually went to uni to study food and wine operations, or food and beverage operations, and winemaking was part of that. And that was really where I got to learn more about, the science of food and wine. And so after that, I started working as a product developer in the food industry, ice cream and chocolate. That was really my field. And wine was wine was always there. Sometimes it was more intensified than in other times, but it was summertime was definitely about rosé and white wine, and then when it was a bit colder, would gravitate towards red wine, and I really loved that movement of the new generation winemakers in Hungary. That was very much starting when I started my professional career, and after that I just decided that. I wanted to learn more, and it was at the height of the molecular cuisine, the molecular gastronomy. So Heston Blumenthal was my ultimate hero. And, that sort of love for, I guess, having a better understanding of flavors, textures, and how we actually perceive all of that, and what else happens, because a lot of it not necessarily about what's in the glass or what's in the plate, but there is a lot more to it, all the atmosphere, the environment, the music, the colors, etc. So that took me to the Netherlands to study food technology, and I had a particular focus on, I guess, gastronomy and the real science of that. And coincidentally, wine was coming up more and more in scientific conversations with mainly like food and wine pairings and flavor combinations, and that ultimately took me to Australia, and I completed my thesis here, and an internship as well at Uni of Adelaide, which was more about the sensory evaluation of wine, sensory science of wine. And I just fell in love with wine tasting and the Australian wine industry that I found very welcoming from the start. And at the same time, I received a scholarship to start a PhD, and yeah, I was fortunate enough to design my own research project that ended up being food, wine, and emotion pairings, and how we could use that to promote Australian wine regions and enhance, or I guess just highlight the sub-regional differences between sub-regions within a region. And I was fortunate to work with some absolutely fantastic professionals in the field, not only in Australia but also in California, in the US. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of telling my whole life story. You just jump in if I'm saying too much, or
Definitely not saying too much. But I mean, when I first read your kind of CV, I suppose I would say, I like to think of myself as somebody that really enjoys the interplay between food and wine. But when I read off the top of your kind of CV, studied food engineering as a food product developer, master's degree in gastronomy, and then a PhD in wine sensory science with a focus on food, wine, emotional pairing at the University of Adelaide in collaboration with Wine Australia and UC Davis. I was floored. I was like, now this is somebody that needs to write a book. This is a person I want to talk to, and I want to absolutely pick your brain about things. I mean, you found this niche, and I didn't even know that some of these degrees even existed. I certainly wouldn't have studied probably contemporary dance if I had known that this degree was out there. But I just think it's wonderful that you have found your way into the wine world, but have this incredible background with food and wine, and also understanding the interplay. For example, when we think about kind of food and wine together, there's sometimes, I'll dare say it, a lot of kind of bullshit that goes into saying why food and wines work together. But there's also a lot of science. And then I love the fact that you're also talking about emotion, because there's these other factors of why a great food and wine experience can be about. And it sometimes has to do with the company or the place you're in or the view. So what an amazing PhD.
Yeah, well, thanks for the kind words. Look, I absolutely agree with you, and I must say that I've been very fortunate to, I guess, turn my genuine interest and the passion into a career, which I'm very, very grateful for. And look, you are absolutely right. Like, as I briefly mentioned, I honestly believe that there is much more to a good time than having great quality wine and food in front of you. And there are, and you could have the most expensive champagne in the world, and the most expensive and highest quality caviar as well, if you just had a absolutely terrible fight with your partner not long ago. And the last thing you want to do is, well, you could as you say it in Hungary, you can find a reason to drink. If you had something to be sad for, or if you have something to celebrate. So I'm sure, you could still have a good time, but the reality is that the mood we are in will definitely have a huge impact in how we actually perceive flavors, because everything will be slightly altered. All of our senses will be slightly altered, and the whole idea is that it's very much connected to our memory. So whatever we see, whatever we hear, we smell, taste, touch, etc., that will evoke certain memories, and those memories will then evoke or elicit emotions, and those emotions will create a slightly longer lasting mood. So I mean, when we say that this meal put me in a good mood, there's actually a lot of truth behind it. So I guess in more casual settings, I always love to ask people that instead of just asking, hey, so what would you like to drink? I just love to ask, what are you in the mood for? I think it's such a great question, because your mood can be very different from day to day, or even from lunch to dinner time, and based on that your preferences can change, and whatever that you would be happy to drink at, I don't know, 5 p.m. May not be the same that you would love to drink at 10 p.m.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I love that question. And I know a few people in the industry that have always kind of said, start with that question, what are you in the mood for? Because rather than maybe even telling you what kind of drink or what kind of dish you're after, it can sometimes just be as simple as, I've had a hell of a day and I need someone else to make the decisions, and I think, that's what we're trying to get at most of the time is, especially when someone walks into a restaurant and you're trying to assess, where they're at and what they need, and use all these verbal clues. So just asking straight out what you're in the mood for cuts through so much barriers, doesn't it? And you often get quite an honest answer from someone.
Yeah, totally, and that just saves time for everyone, and you can really make someone's day just by giving them what they truly want.
Now, you have all this information after all of your studies, and then you worked your way into putting it into practice. Was your first role as a sommelier, where was that at?
Well, in Australia, I had a few smaller casual roles in wineries and small wine bars. But the first, I would say, major role that I had was at McGill Estate, Penfolds McGill Estate, where I first started as a sommelier, and then shortly after I became the head sommelier, which is absolutely fantastic because, needless to say, we are talking about one of the oldest and one of the most iconic brands of Australia, and I had access to a lot of history there, not just in terms of actual history, but also liquid history, and really. That was the time I really got to discover, and I guess got to understand the beauty of aged Australian wine. I just remember one of the most iconic moments when there was an event hosted by Peter Gago, and he opened a few bottles of Bin 7 from 1978, and also the Bin 68 from 1962, which are both Shiraz Cabernets, so the absolutely iconic Australian blend, of course, the definition of a claret. And what was very very striking about those two wines is that both of those wines, 50, I think at the time we were talking about 50, 52 years probably for the Bin 7, a little more for the Bin 68. what really got me was the fact that both of those wines still had primary fruit. And if I was to taste those wines taste those wines in blind, I probably would have guessed something, great vintage, maybe 1991 or maybe late 80s, something like that. So and that really sparked this interest for older wines and particularly older Australian wines, which I still keep my eyes out for. Even some of the older fortified wines, some Tonys, sometimes easily going back to the 1970s, 60s, etc. I just love that liquid history. And of course, there was a food part as well, which was again like fine dining. It was a fine dining environment, but because most of Penfolds wines are red wines, I just had to be a bit more creative about how to create wine pairings and how to create dining experiences, because putting together, most of the tasting menu was really seafood driven, seafood heavy. So I really had to be creative and learn how to use aged wines in food and wine pairing. So I actually really like that, or how to use fortified wines. And yeah, so that was the first role, and then COVID happened, and then I also had a very serious accident, which then obviously related to my winemaking. Unfortunately, a wine barrel full of wine fell onto my foot, and I had a very serious injury, which essentially kept me in a chair in a bed for nearly 8 months. And that was a long time to, I guess, rethink what I wanted to do. And that it was also questionable whether I can, whether I can walk properly, whether I can work on the floor again. And that was the time when I discovered my passion for instance, wine writing and communication and the education part of it. And then after that, there was another opportunity, which thankfully aligned with my relatively successful rehabilitation. And that opportunity was a historical restaurant, or I should say historical heritage listed tea house in the Adelaide Botanic Gardens. And I joined that project, which became known as Restaurant Botanic. And pretty much we, when I joined, it was a construction site, and we had a vision, concept, and that was absolutely about experiential dining. Or it is still about experiential dining, and the goal was to create a destination dining, a restaurant that would be unique and would attract people not only from all around Australia, but from all around the world eventually. So that, but the concept was initiated by Chef Justin James, and I joined, I think probably the second or the third person in the core team, in the senior management role. So I joined as a beverage director, and I had basically all the freedom to develop the food beverage program, including the wines, including cocktail, spirits, and a very exciting non-alcoholic program as well. That was meant to feature the Botanic Gardens, the Adelaide Botanic Gardens. So that 51 hectare area, obviously consisting a lot of super interesting native ingredients, and through all kinds of non-alcoholic fermentations, infusions, etc., we created some absolutely unique drinks.
Amazing. I mean, that whole experience of your incredibly unfortunate accident with the barrel, I mean, I imagine that just, did it just completely crush your foot?
Yeah, that's right. So that was, that was I think from memory, 7 surgeries, and but unfortunate. I guess the fortunate part of this misfortune is that it happened here in Australia, and there was a technique developed here in Adelaide that ended up saving my foot. Look, I consider myself very fortunate, and now I'm doing quite well. I'm able to run. Since then, I actually very ambitiously set out a goal while just at the moment as I was, being able to start walking. I just set out a goal that I really want to run a marathon. So I done that last year, which I was very happy about.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, it's now that I know you a little bit better, it seems appropriate that, of course, in the midst of your recovery, you decided you want to run a marathon. But it's kind of crazy that that experience. But I suppose, it's amazing that in that time when you were, unable to move, that, you were thinking, okay, I've got all these skills. How do I use them, and how can I keep this up? And where a lot of people would go into, I think, a pretty dark place, you just started, and I'm sure recovery wasn't easy, but you just started, already being proactive of like, how can I utilize what I know and where can I go from here? And so it's wonderful that you looked at somewhere like a beverage director role where you can be a little bit, not every day is working those floors as hard as possible, but also that, establishing Ludo and everything else you're doing. You're just somebody that I can't imagine ever manages to sit still for long without creating something or doing something sensational. It's remarkable.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think there is a secret to this. I think I think it's important to understand that change is part of life, and you need to embrace change, because if you keep resisting change, that's when you can become quite unhappy, and you can, as you said, you can get into some darker places, and those places are not near where I would like to stay for much longer.
I do want to talk a little bit about LUDO Wines, because not at the time when those wines were released, I didn't know a lot about you, but I was immediately captured by those wines. One, because I thought they were incredibly intriguing, and two, because I automatically saw somebody who had a real kind of palate for a drinking experience, and I mean that particularly in the rosé that you drink, because I'm not somebody that drinks a lot of rosé. I need to kind of have a reason to drink rosé. I need to see the varieties. It needs to have texture enough to interest me. Otherwise, I would probably drink a white wine, or if, I find it a funny place. And there are wonderful rosés out there. But it's immediately when I tasted your rosé, I was like, here is somebody that understands what good drinking and pleasure in drinking is all about. And I've loved the evolution of them each year. So tell me a little bit about what your aim was when you produced LUDO Wines, and what was at the heart of what you wanted to put out onto the market.
Oh, look, thanks for the thanks for your kind words, and thanks for your support from the get-go. I think you're definitely someone who really understood what I wanted to achieve with that rosé, and with Ludo in particular. Ludo itself is an interesting story, because I started Ludo with two of my friends who were also my PhD colleagues, and it kind of made sense to make wine together, because all of us had a winemaking experience in Europe, and we did our PhDs in different fields: wine microbiology, viticulture, and the wine sensory part. And because of that, we also had access to some high quality grapes in McLaren Vale, and we just utilized this opportunity. And this is how the first vintage of LUDO in 2018 came by. Then we just repeated that. We really started with like 1 ton of Shiraz, and just made it slightly differently, which at the time was using a special yeast discovered by Anna, one of my friends and colleagues, who was in the microbiology side. And that yeast was very special, or is still very special, because it actually converts part of the sugar into lactic acid instead of ethanol. And by that, it naturally produces lower alcohol wines with higher natural acidity. So it was something very exciting, especially in a warmer region that could really feel the heat quite literally in warmer years. And we just wanted to try it. And the first vintage we really liked the first vintage, second vintage as well, and then the third vintage. I just thought that, I kind of like the wines, but, they make decent red wine, but I think I just feel like we could make a better rosé. And the whole rosé idea was driven by an idea to make white Shiraz, which, you saw the first vintage of the rosé. It was everything but white. It was definitely a darker rosé. So in that sense, it didn't quite work out. The experiment didn't quite work out. But the other part was to actually create a very textural and complex wine, whether it's a textural white or a rosé. That was kind of secondary. It was more about really, creating something that has a fruit element, some spice, some minerality, but also has some lovely savory pithiness to it, some saltiness. And I think once if you have a goal, if you have a purpose, if you're very clear about what you want to do in terms of flavor profile, you can start working backwards. Like, how can I get some savoriness, some pithiness into the wine? How can I get a bit of saltiness to it? The fruit part will come anyways in McLaren Vale, so it wasn't necessarily an issue. And we just started. At that time was actually only myself, because the two of the other guys left Adelaide. So I just started to work backwards. Okay, so what are the steps that I need to apply to get there, and kind of broke it down into individual winemaking steps, and you tasted the result, and they just worked out well. And having said that, had it been a different vintage, maybe would have been a different result. So I think it's kind of like making interesting wines to me is always a combination of intention, skill, but also there's a bit of luck involved, because you still need to be able to, you can't really change what Mother Nature has in mind.
That's for sure. And I think that the way, when you drink your wines, you really see the place that's present in the wines. You see a little bit of the workings of you as well, I think, in being kind of a craftsman and a bit of an artisan. But you certainly see somebody that understands flavour and texture and kind of how they all work together. And that's what I love about LUDO Wines, is the fascinating story of you and what you've done in your past and present is all wrapped up into these wines. And I think that they're really something that people should seek out. There's not a huge amount of them made, but they're such interesting wines. And I'm really glad that I get to see them and get to drink them. And I hope we see more from LUDO.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there is It will never be a lot, but there will be a little bit more. I think this year and also next year. I think I feel like we kind of found a sweet spot with the production, which is still not a lot. So probably the largest release might be probably 5,000 bottles across all the wines. But that will be plenty for a little passion project.
Well, it's pretty exciting, and keep up with that rosé. I think that rosé could be the rosé of Australia if you keep on that trajectory. So I'd love to see that. I'd like to know a little bit about your palate as well. If you were, only able to pick 3 drinks for the rest of your life, Marcell, what would you drink and why?
Okay. Oh, well, it's a question that I kind of knew it was coming, but didn't quite have the opportunity to really think it through. So I think it will be, I will just improvise. I think, look, I think I like switching things up a little bit. So it's not necessarily just about wine. So I think margarita, nice salty rim, that would definitely be it. One of them. And well, obviously, it would have to be a rosé. Let's be honest. So it wouldn't be me if I didn't pick a rosé. And probably the most remarkable rosé I tasted recently is it's actually a Rioja rosé from Viña Tondonia, 2012. Yeah. So honoring that traditional winemaking in Rioja, extended barrel aging and then extended bottle aging before release. So I think the 2012 is the current release, and that's to me the definition of the unicorn wine as well, because it's nearly impossible to put your hands on one of those.
Totally impossible, and one of the greatest wines ever made. I love that.
Yeah. And for the third one, well, that's a bit of a hard one. Look, I would probably go with, I think I would go with, like a really, like an aged Australian red, like a proper claret. Yeah, so... it would be either a Shiraz Cabernet or a Cabernet. Yeah, so I mean, it could be you could pick any of the classics with probably 30 years on it, and I would gladly drink it.
That's pretty amazing. Look, I have such a soft spot for beautifully cellared aged wines, but the problem is you don't see them that often, and unless they're great wines to start with, they don't age. They don't get better with age unless they're great to start with. But I've been lucky enough to have some amazing older wines, and I'm with you on that. But I'm surprised to hear that you haven't said a Tokay.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I could have said that, and
I'll allow you a fourth if you share some with me.
Done deal. Yeah.
Hungary produces, for me, some of the most remarkable sweet wines, and their Tokay is probably my pick if I'm to ever have a sweet wine. And, the French would hate me, but I would pick a Tokay over a Sauterne any day of the week. And those wines are absolutely amazing. So we're going to have to put that in our diaries one day, to drink a beautiful aged Tokay followed by a great Australian claret. I'm going to make sure that we tick that off our list. Marcell?
Yeah, sounds like a plan. And we need to get the Hungarian government to get you as an ambassador for Tokay.
Oh, God, can you imagine?
That's the sentence they love to hear. I would pick a Tokayasu over Sauterne any day.
I would, and I know I'll get in trouble, but I absolutely commit to it. So I probably need to work on my Hungarian language skills. You can help me with that too. But it's been fantastic getting to know more about you. I just really am fascinated by everything you do, and hats off to you for all the hard work you put into everything. And thank you, Marcell, for coming on the podcast. I'm thrilled.
Thanks, Shanteh, for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.